First thing we need to do is go open up our footage. In this case, I have a TIFF sequence. And I'm going to drop that in a new comp. And that comp is 1080, 1920 by 1080 HD. You can see that there's some pretty substantial fisheye going on over here. That was like that with all the cameras we tried, so there was no way to really avoid that with these POV style cameras. So, and there's also paper on the screens so that we could later key out the screens for like the finger swipes and things like that, as well as use the corners for mocha tracking. So the first thing we did to make this footage usable in our tracking programs was convert this comp to double its size, 3840 by 2160. And then we want to pre-comp the footage. I'll call it original footage. And then you want to apply optics compensation to that comp. Go ahead and check the reverse lens distortion button and drag the field of view up, and you'll see it start to kind of stretch out. And you can see, especially over here, it'll start to get straight. Straight, straight, straight. There we go. So you can draw lines on top of this to kind of check yourself. I'll add some here. You can kind of zoom in, kind of see what the effect of this is having. You know, we ended up right around 118 for the camera we were using, and again, it'll change depending on what kind of camera that you're using. So I'm going to go ahead and call that good enough. Come back to here. The next thing we need to do is export this giant movie out so that we can use it in syntheyes or mocha or whatever other tracking application that you want to use it in. So I'm going to add that to my render queue and send it on its way. All right, here is our scene in syntheyes. This is just part of the scene. In this particular shot, there's a few different edits, so this is just one section of it. I've placed in some of the little earthling geometry guys so that I could make sure that my track is in the right place. I've also started this doing manual tracking. Here's a track here called sign. I've got one down here called ground. And I basically did some manual tracking first, and then I kind of blipped it and had it do a solve after that. And so, yeah, I'm not going to get too far into syntheyes here because that could be a whole nother tutorial. But just wanted to show you kind of our workflow here. And so we take this, we export this back out to After Effects or to Cinema 4D, depending on what shot we were going to be, what kind of graphics we're going to be adding to the shot. So I am back in After Effects. I have imported my syntheyes export and have it opened up here. The comp I exported out as a .ma file. After Effects can read that in, read in the 3D data, and it brings in the nulls from the project as well. You can kind of see up here, you know, the scene minus any sort of background image. I just didn't have it export that out as well. But the only things I'm really going to care about for this, since I named some of my trackers so I could find them later, I've got a ground shape null, and I've got this sign shape null and the camera. I'm going to copy those Here's my distorted scene over here. I'm gonna check out frame 134 is where I started my track in syntheyes. So I'm gonna come over here to frame 134. I'm gonna paste the 3D camera and the nulls that I brought in. And you can see them kind of following along in the scene here. So, you know, we basically use the position of these nulls with this camera to add our signs in, and I'll just add a quick shape here. So composition. So I'll drop this test sign comp that I just quickly threw together. I'm gonna switch on, make it a 3D layer. It's gonna pop in somewhere randomly in your scene, it seems. So I can take this sign shape. I can go down to its properties, and I can copy its position and paste it to the 3D layer that I just created, the test sign. And now that 3D layer, that comp in After Effects, is going to be placed in the right place. I can scale it down a little bit. I can use the anchor point to kind of move it around, or I can use position to move it around. It doesn't matter since this object isn't moving. I can go backwards or forwards, up or down. I can even come forward or backward in space once I know where that position is. So I can put this sign here. I can duplicate this. Put a sign further back here. Duplicate this. Just say I want a sign way up front. All right, so the next step of this is taking it into Mocha. And here I am in Mocha for AE. I have tracked this. This was a pretty simple Mocha track compared to some of the ones that we had to do. But again, I'm not going to show you the whole Mocha process. I just wanted to kind of set it up for y'all. All right, here you can see I got my surface on. I've got my grid on so I can check, make sure everything's tracking nicely. And now I'm going to go ahead and export the tracking data. And we're going to use, for this project, we used Red Giant Warp because it allowed us to do some things to the corner pin after we got it back in After Effects. So we would just save this out as a text file and import it back in After Effects. So our Mocha track is done. I'm going to go ahead and come back in After Effects. And I'm going to create a new comp for my screen that I'm going to use to replace. I've already done this. I just made a placeholder screen just so I could illustrate kind of how this works. I'm going to go ahead and drop my test screen into the comp. And to do the corner pinning with the Red Giant Warp corner pin, you've got to do some pre-comping to get it to be the right size. If your footage is a different size than your main master comp. So I've got my screen here. I'm going to pre-compose it. We'll call this screen pre-comp. So now I have this composition that's the size of my stage. I'm going to double click it. I'm going to select it. And I'm going to fit it to the stage. This is an important step. If not, it'll be tiny on your screen. So just stretch it, even if it's the wrong aspect ratio. Just go and stretch it all the way out. So you'll see now that it's essentially the size of our main stage here. So I'm going to right click, go to Effect, and RG Warp. I'm going to add the RG corner pin, and I'm going to load the text file that I just created. First thing I actually need to do is set it to be at the right frame that my mocha started at. My mocha track started at, which is frame 134. So, effect. Okay, I'm gonna load the pins. So my tracks, I'm gonna select the one that I exported. There we go. As you can see, I now have my test screen corner pinned and tracked into place. What I don't have yet is the key in place, and that'll be the next thing we'll do. You'll see the finger and all that is going underneath our object when it needs to be over it. Also, there's a little bit of blue around the outside because it's not quite the right size. This is why we wanted to use RG Warp, is because we can now resize this slightly. So scale X, I can just say like 1.05. Scale Y. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is get ready to key out our screen and start putting the final touches on this scene. This part's pretty complicated, so I'm gonna try to explain it the best I can. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I've got my back distorted kind of image plate back here. I'm just gonna solo it in After Effects. So what I want to do is have the screen go over this blue piece of paper here. We don't want to sit there and mask out the finger, which we could have done pretty easily in this scene, but some of the other scenes had a lot more hand and finger overlap over the devices, and it would have taken a lot longer to key this out. Plus, we wanted to try to retain some of these shadows. So I'm going to use Primat Keyer, which is another Red Giant plugin. Just go and select this. Base color, I'm just going to select this blue. And I'm going to go ahead and change my composition background to something kind of crazy so I can see what's going on. Okay. So there's our keyed out screen. Other thing I like to use on this is this Matte Feather Sharp. So let's unsolo this. Right now, the screen is still on top of this key, but I'm just going to take down here, I'm going to take this comp and I'm going to put it the screen comp, the test screen comp, below the footage that I just keyed out. And you'll see now on top, below. So this is why I made the test screen comp a little bit bigger, because now it's situated it's almost like we cut a window out of the phone here. But you'll see, because of that, it picked up all these blues and all of this stuff out here in the rest of the scene. So we're actually keying out a lot more than we should be. To create a quick mask to take care of this, what we did is we took this original source footage comp and we duplicated it. That's Command D on a Mac. And I'm going to turn the Primat Keyer off. I'm just going to delete it. So we have our unkeyed footage again on top of the keyed footage. And I'm going to create a new solid. I want it to be black because I'm going to use this as a track mat. And I'm going to come back to frame 134. I'm going to use the same corner pin data that I used for the screen, and I'm going to apply it to this black solid. So here's my screen pre-comp. I'm going to hit E to twiddle down the effects pull down. There's my corner pin. I'm just going to copy and paste that data. You'll see here. Now I've got this shape animated, okay? So I'm going to put this, I'm going to go and label this matte. In my original comp, I'm going to track matte this. Original comp, I'm going to track matte this. I'm going to use alpha inverted. Okay. So essentially what I've done now is I've basically punched out of the full color comp just the area that I'm going to be keying out below it. So we don't have to worry about making a mask or cleaning up our key or any of that kind of stuff. So again, I'm just using the corner pin data to create that matte. And here, you see everything is working pretty good. Let's do a RAM preview real quick. So I'm pretty happy with that. We could spend more time, and we did, fine-tuning the key for the final project, but that's pretty good. The next thing we did to get our shadows, because there are, you know, if you look at the source footage, there are some shadows on the screen. I'm going to take the original comp that has the key applied to it still. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to duplicate this yet again. I'm going to kill the Primat keyer, so we have this footage here. I'm going to turn this black and white. Because I just want to get these values. I don't want any color for the next thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to put this underneath my screen, and I'm going to change my blending mode from my screen to screen. You can also use overlay. Sometimes it works better depending on what kind of light you have falling on the scene. So I don't know if you can see it, but now by doing this, you know, we get shadows on the screen from the fingers and from the lighting from the sun as we're walking around. There you have it. So again, at the bottom of this, I have the original comp that I've got black. It's set to black and white. Above that, I have the screen pre-comp. Above that, I have the keyed layer, the phone. And above that, I have the original footage with a track matte using the same corner pin data to punch out, to basically matte out the key underneath, so I don't have to go worry about it keying out all this other blue elsewhere in the scene. Okay, so I quickly threw together this really bad graphic, but hopefully it helps explain the way that we put these layers together. So we have a black matte layer, just basically just a black solid with the same RG warp corner pin data that we have on the screen. Underneath that, we have the original footage set to track matte alpha invert. That basically punches a hole through the original footage. Underneath, we can see the keyed screen. So footage with key is below that, original footage with the key. Below that, we have the screen replacement composition, and we've set it to overlay or screen as a blending mode, depending on which the lighting and a few other factors. And below that, we have the original footage desaturated to pick up the any sort of shadows from the fingers or light changes as we're walking around outside. So we know this is pretty complicated. If you have any questions, you can email us and we'll do our best to help you out. All right, so we're all done with most of the big steps. And the final step is redistorting the footage back to its original fisheye state so that all of our graphics and our base plate all have the same fisheye distortion and they all kind of live together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this scene 11 into a new comp, and I'm going to change the composition settings to be 1080p again, 1920 by 1080. And I'm going to apply optics compensation back to this comp. Let's go over to where our graphics actually start. And now I'm going to adjust the field of view to reintroduce the fisheye. And so I pull it back till I just start seeing it kind of come in the corners there. So now our footage is redistorted as it was before, and all of our graphics are now distorted fisheyed as well. So there you have it. And we're not saying this is the only way to do this, but it's the kind of method we came up with. And if it helps anyone out, then we'll be happy.